The board truly appreciates your patience for the amount of time that we spent in there. Thank you for waiting. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the East Lyme Board of Selectmen, or do I have to end the executive session?
Yeah, we have to.
Huh?
No, we came out of executive
Came out
session
of
with no
executive
motion,
session.
action taken.
Okay, so we'd like to open the regular meeting of today, which is September 3rd of the Board of Selectmen. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The cameras, I think, are working here, right? Yeah.
Wow.
I don't believe we have any additional agenda or consent calendar items. Are there delegations this evening? Anybody like to speak? Mr. Jacobs, good evening, sir.
Good evening, everybody. I think I know all of you and vice versa. Normally, I'm here once a year to ask for your support of the library budget, but tonight I'm here for something that has absolutely nothing to do with the library. So we'll put that off till next March. But in all seriousness, I am here to ask the board to do something that does not involve any expenditure of money. In fact, quite to the contrary, it could result in money coming into the town. And I know that normally the board deals with significant issues affecting the town, the budget, our public school system, fire protection, police protection, and a whole host of other significant issues. What I want to talk to you about tonight, and I know it's late, and I know being on many boards, you want to get out here and go home, so this will be brief. But I don't want to diminish the significance of what I'm going to say. As all of you, I am sure, have noticed for many, many years, this is not a recent problem, but for many, many years, we have had a cancer of signs, lawn signs, all over town, particularly at major intersections like Flanders Four Corners, the West Main Street by where the Niantic Center School is, down at Crescent Beach and Black Point area. Holly, I'm sure you've seen the same signs that I do every day when I do my run. Crescent Beach is inundated with them. Adawan and Oak Grove Beach are affected by it. I'm not up in the northern part of town that often, but I'm sure north of Flanders Four Corners is no different than the beach areas. Now, what I want to say is this. I and some neighbors of mine are tired of, over the last few years, going around town picking up lawn signs on public property. Signs on private property are a whole different ballgame, and they're perfectly legal. It is illegal to put signs on utility poles and public property, and we're getting tired of it. It makes the town look terrible. Now, all I'm asking the town to do is enforce a law that's already in our ordinance, town ordinances, which makes it illegal to put signs on public property. It makes the town look like Coney Island, and I say that as a native New Yorker, so I hate to say that, but you get the point I'm making. Now, two other points, and then I'll let you go on with the meeting. About 6 months ago, 7 months, I don't know, sometime last spring, I want to say March, April, sometime around then, I noticed there were two towns in our area of southeastern Connecticut that I noticed have a complete absence of signs. It was, I think, Chester and Essex. So I stopped into town hall at both of those towns, and I asked to see the first select person of both of those towns. And I couldn't get past the secretary, so I never got to see the first select person. But in one town, I saw the public works director. In the other town, I saw the zoning enforcement officer. I forget which in which town, but it doesn't make any difference. And I was very honest with him, and I said, look, I live in East Lyme, and we have this problem with contractor signs and business signs on public property. And I noticed your town doesn't have that problem. And they both kind of laughed, and they gave me the exactly same story. What they said was, several years ago, they were having the problem. What they decided they were going to do was enforce the law. And what they decided was that that any elected town official or appointed official like public works director or zoning enforcement officer or town engineer or anybody at that level, if they saw a sign on public property Every sign has usually an email address or a phone number, usually both. They come back to the office, pick up the phone, and say, hey, look, this is Joe Smith. I'm the town engineer of Essex. I notice you have a sign up on the corner of Elm and Main Street. You have 24 hours to remove it, or you will be fined in accordance with town ordinance, which varies. I don't know, sometimes it's $35, sometimes it's 55. I don't know what it is. In fact, I'm not even sure what it is in East Line. I think it's $65 in East Line. I'm not sure. Doesn't make any difference. But two things happened. A, did away with the sign problem, and B, the town made a couple of bucks when the contractors didn't come out. I'm not picking on contracts. They weren't all contracts. But when the business owner came out and picked up the signs too late, they were fined. All I'm asking this board to do is enforce our laws. And I think you all saw probably what happened up at Flanders Four Corners this past weekend. After 4 o'clock, some business in New London going out of business, they just plastered that area with about 50 signs, and it looked terrible. All right, that's the first point. Second point, and then I'll be on my way. Paul, you'll appreciate this because we have something in common. I know you were chair of the Republican Town Committee. I am a former chairman of the Democratic Town Committee. We have an election coming up. We all know what happens with election signs. They spring up everywhere like weeds. What I would ask you as first selectman to do, Paul, is call the chair of our two major parties, the Republican Town Committee and the Democratic Town Committee, and say, look, it's only early September, the election's not till early November, but here is the town ordinance. You don't put signs up on public property. You can put lawn signs on every voter in the town if you want, on private property, but keep them off town property. This is not a political issue. This is not a Republican or a Democratic issue. It's an issue to make our town look respectable and to enforce the laws of our town. That's my plea for tonight. Good to see all of you.
Thank you.
I just so notified the Republican town chair, so that you're all set.
Roseanne,
Thank
you and I will do the same.
All right. Thank you very much. We
Thank you,
appreciate
Paul.
it. Who else would like to speak in public delegate? Mr. McCullough?
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I'd just like to make a few comments about the tax collector's role with CPACE, the solar energy state-supported organization. I've been asked to describe the responsibilities and procedures involving revenue collection and CPACE, also known as Connecticut Property Assessed Clean Energy. First, the cost involved. I've been told by Walsh, our software supplier, that our water and sewer department has software in place that could be implemented to the tax office to serve a new billing for CPACE. If we have to customize the software, the charge would be 2 to 4 service hours, in which case I would request payment from CPACE for the additional cost. The tax office is really just a conduit in the whole process between CPACE and a business owner who signs a contract to have solar power installed for his or her company. I spoke to the Salington collector today, who has one company signed to the CPACE program to date, and he informed me that the town council had to create a lien to be placed against the contract. The contract for the company, in this case, lasts 20 years with a semi-annual collection at a 6% interest rate. The principal for the contract is $145,000. At 6% interest, it would total $245,385. The tax collector's responsibility is to print the bills, to send out the bills, and to collect payments for the project. The finance officer would create a new account for the revenue, which would be sent to the appropriate state agency at the end of each month. The collection dates would be July and January, just like municipal tax bills. I want to stress that this revenue has nothing to do with the grand list, and it has nothing to do with the town budget. The town would receive a flat fee of $500 for this service. Over half the municipalities in the state have already signed on for CPACE. Just a further note, I'd like to point out that our last final collection rate for the 2012 grand list was 98.75%, based on collections of $47,123,000, with a balance of $599,500. That's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCullough.
Thank you.
Mr. Formica, would you inquire if Mr. McCulloch plans to stay during the meeting for our discussion? I have some questions.
Ms. Hardy has asked if you plan to stay for the discussion portion of this, which would be the item we have on the agenda. Were you planning to stay, or were you planning just to make your remarks and leave?
Well, I was planning on making my remarks and leaving, but if I can contribute to the discussion, I'd be glad to stay.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak under public delegation? Mr. Biala wants?
Good evening, Mr. Formica and other board members.
Good evening, Mr. Biala wants.
My name is John Bialowans Jr. of 61 Walnut Hill Road, and I have a few issues to address the Board of Selectmen tonight. Is the town going to pursue the injunction on the solar farm center plan on Walnut Hill Road? I know they got a cease and desist, but I would just like to know if they're going to go one step further on this issue. Is the town going to speaking for myself, help me pursue this damage and liability done to our property from the solar farm center plan twice failed erosion control measures they built? The town changed the zoning for this use, and or are they at fault also? We have silt, beaver dams, and gullies 3 and 4 foot deep now. This was never like this in the 100 years or so my grandparents and my family own this property. The next matter is about the Meadows Pond, that she says the town's at fault. Why is the town doing anything to fix her pond, digging it out, and fixing the rocks of the pond? The town dug it out once for her because it was the catch basins for Cummins Horse Farm. Now it's the alignment of the pipe underneath the road. Her father used to maintain the slopes before and never had any problems. The town is going to open up a can of worms doing this work on private property. I am going to be one of the first taxpayers to ask for their help for my problems with center plan. The town changed the zoning to special use for this solar farm. This is not the first time I have mentioned the Meadows Pond to the Board of Selectmen's attention. And also, I would like to say something to Mr. Seary about the nice letter he wrote to the day about Ed Morris, and also to Joe Braggle for answering my questions about the curbing and landscape issues on Walnut Hill Road. I haven't been bothering Paul because Joe said that he wanted to take care of it he could take care of answering all my questions. So I'm going to end my comments for tonight now, but there are other issues that will be addressed later. Thank you for your time. John Bialowans Jr. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bialowans. Anyone else? Mr. Sawicki, did you like to speak?
My name is William Sawicki. I live at 425 Drosdick Drive, Groton, Connecticut. I own and pay taxes in the town of East Lyme. I have been searching for additional material that would be helpful in convincing the Board of Selectmen to approve the purchase of my undeveloped 15-acre tract of forested land and send it on to the next step. During my search, I learned that a member of the Board of Selectmen could not make heads or tails of my proposal and made gestures to indicate that there was not enough on the table to evaluate. I discussed the issue by phone with the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and I was assured my proposal would be on the agenda for discussion, possibly during the last meeting this month. I look forward to being in a position to exchange dialogue regarding my proposal. I also learned that a board member commented that the $250,000 selling price may be a good value. I will prove mathematically that my selling price monetarily is a good value relative to the value of the $1,225,000 selling price for the 166-acre proposal on tonight's agenda. In addition, I will attempt to show the purchase of my 15-acre tract of forested land may equal or surpass the quality of life benefits to the public as the 166-acre proposal. I am thankful for the opportunity to speak before the board. Long live American democracy, capitalism, justice, and the liberty to denounce unjust activity connected with money. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Sawicki. Mr. Mingo.
Good evening. Once again, I come before you for one of my pet peeves.
Good evening.
2 weeks in a row, last week I called the town hall about the signs on Flanders Four Corners. I talked to the district engineer at the Norwich office of the Department of Transportation, and he told me to go out and pick up the signs. There's no reason why a town employee can't go out there and pick them up. He had the same problem. He lives in Mystic. They put the signs out after 4 o'clock because they know the sign Nazi from the Norwich office goes home. And they pick him up before he comes to work on Monday morning. It is not illegal to pick up the signs. Anybody can pick them up. One year I picked up over 300 illegal signs in this town until I was accosted by one of the town police who wanted to arrest me. And I says, I never even touched that sign. But there is a state statute that gives the tree warden the authority to pick up the signs, remove the signs from telephone poles, and he can also fine people. Anybody can pick up signs that are illegal. It's not larceny. If they're on private property, it's larceny. But Gorn's Furniture put out over 25 signs 2 weeks in a row on Flanders Four Corners, and they also put them on a federal highway, which was the exit from 95 next to the mobile station. That is totally illegal. That's against federal law. So there's no reason why we can't have a town employee go out there and pick up the signs and throw them in a dumpster. Signs breed. Once somebody puts one out, now 10 more will show up in their place. The town is starting to look like a honky-tonk. It's environmental pollution, and it needs to be addressed. I mean, merchants in this town spend a small fortune on landscaping. To have somebody stick a sign in front of a landscape building is blasphemy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mingo. Anyone else like to speak under public delegations? Okay. Thank you. Hearing none, the next item on the agenda will be the approval of minutes of the August 6, 2014 meeting.
So moved.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there a discussion on these minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? Next item then would be the consent calendar.
Move to approve the consent calendar for the meeting of September 3rd, 2014, the amount of $721.41.
Motion is made. Is there a second?
Second?
Second. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Could I request of the chair, under item 2, new business, that we reverse A and B? I just have a few questions about the agreement, and I think our discussion on item A might be longer.
Okay. You board okay with that?
Sure.
Very much.
Very good.
All right, so we'll take up the business of the resolution to approve the commercial property assessed clean energy, which is the CPACE agreement. And we'll note that we can include the tax collector, Mr. McCullough, in that conversation.
Thank you. This document has been reviewed by town council. I began to read it over. I think it's 11 pages, and I got as far as page 6. But I'm concerned that it seems excessively cumbersome. And I am concerned about the amount of time that this would take the tax collector's office to do, and I would like to ask if the tax collector could address us on that.
Tracy, did you review this? So, John, you want to get up and talk about that a little bit, but I'd like Tracy to go over that. And I did have conversation with Ms. Johnson, Anna Johnson, about this, and the costs that would be incurred by the town would be repayable by the CPACE thing. And there are a number of businesses, most specifically one of the churches, I believe, is interested in moving forward with this. So they're waiting for our action, just so as everybody is aware of that. Do you want to have John go first or have
It
Tracy?
doesn't matter to me.
John, why don't you answer some brief questions, and then Tracy could go over, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah. So the question I think you heard was the amount of time that the tax office is and whether that would be reimbursable, most likely, I think.
Yeah, I've talked to a few other collectors. They haven't really addressed that issue yet because it's fairly a new program for most of the towns that have signed on to it. As I said, in Southington, they've got one property so far. I guess it all depends on if it catches fire, and we would have to, I think the biggest issue would be just setting it up, really. And once it was set in place, I don't think it would take a lot of time to instigate, create our own badge, and I just don't see this taking a huge amount of time, to tell you the truth.
And you said that, if you might know mind, you said that the water and sewer has a module that we could kind of piggyback on
Yes,
for
exactly.
this, so you could add
Right.
your tax rate on there.
So
we-
possibly this may not even cost us anything,
yeah, okay.
just to set it up.
I'm just wondering about ongoing, inputting the information, then tracking it.
Right.
And the computer can do a lot, but somebody's got to input the information.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so, at your area tax collector meetings, have you discussed any other with any other towns that might have this in place?
The last meeting I went to, they really introduced it to those who didn't know about it, and it was an interesting discussion, and there's some back and forth with other collectors. I know the Norwalk collector is debating how much responsibility the municipality should have and how much CPACE should have. So there's still a debate going on as far as who's responsible for what here.
This debate, if I don't mind, I'll interject for discussion purposes. This debate centers around the increased value to the property that these solar systems would add, and therefore the necessary motions that we would need to take to collect, to assess, and then collect that tax. Is that the crux of the matter with your office, or?
I think-
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I think this whole thing is really between the owner and the state. I think it's the state that puts the value of, the contract together. So I think this contract is a separate entity from anything that I do, as far as what I'm doing presently. It's all based, like I said, one example is a 20-year contract, a 6% interest rate collected biannually. It's really, it stands by itself. It's
So-
not part of what I do right now.
So if I understand correctly, this in effect, the state is financing energy improvements in buildings based, so advancing the owners the amount required. The owner then repays this loan over 20 years,
Right.
but it's collected via the tax office.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So this is all subject to the CPACE having a first lien on the property, am I correct, Tracy? And we basically are the funnel through which payments are made from the owner to the state for paying for these energy improvements.
That's correct.
Okay. So it doesn't have to do with anything to do with the increased value. They're basically paying the mortgage for this through us, and we send it to the state. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Am I right?
In a nutshell, yes, we're acting as the collection agent and the record keeping in terms of priorities for CPACE. But if I may, just as a practical matter,
Pull that microphone up a little bit.
as a practical matter, to get this loan, you have to have the consent of the mortgage holder. And as a practical matter, I don't see, this benefits commercial properties and industrial properties and churches in town. I don't see how many mortgage companies or banks are going to be willing to subrogate their loan to the tax liens and the CPACE liens. So I don't see how there'd be a rash of applications if that were the case. So when Mr. McCullough says that the town that he spoke to today only has one application, that does not surprise me.
Okay, that was one of the things that occurred to me when I was reading this. If, in effect, CPACE becomes the first lien holder, if I'm the bank or the mortgage company, I'm really not going to, I'm not happy with that. I don't want to be second or third in line.
That's why the mortgage holder has to consent before this loan is made. And also, as another practical matter, to address one of your concerns, there's a 60-day opt-out in this contract. So if the municipality does not want to participate anymore on any new contracts, it can opt out if it does become too overwhelming for the tax collector. We would be responsible to maintain the ones that we already have, but we do have that opt-out.
And again, my understanding is we are not, in effect, if someone defaults, the debt collector, unless CPACE said we would like you to then, function in that capacity.
That's correct. If there is a default, then CPACE takes over. They can pay us to foreclose the lien, or we can say we don't want to partake in that.
Okay, so between the two of you, your read is that there may be some demand, but it's unlikely to be overwhelming. And how would we track, John, the amount of time put into this? Would you set up a separate system, or do you think it would, once we'd set up the recording system, it would be pretty straightforward, so there would not be a lot of administrative time?
Yes, I could, create a spreadsheet or something, the time involved. And, could work it out that way.
So my only other question is, we're responsible for promoting this, and I know we get the $500 fee. Would the cost of promoting it be included in that fee?
Gary, are you here to speak to this issue too?
If need be to answer any questions.
Is that a question you could answer, or?
I don't believe the cost of promoting it is within that $500 fee.
It's my understanding that it's not within that fee, from my reading of the contract.
So it would be our responsibility to pay for the promotion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of additional questions. Under Section 1, the definitions, there's certain criteria that must be met, must be inspected. Who's responsible for doing that and tracking the project?
CPACE is responsible for the inspection and making sure that the improvements are being made. In fact, there's a provision in here that if you start to do construction, let's say put in a new boiler, and the project was initially supposed to be $30,000, but now it's going to be $50,000, CPACE is in charge of all the paperwork. One thing that may help you, Mrs. Hardy, is the town's obligations begin in Section 3 on page 5.
Yes, I did read those. The obligations of the municipality.
Yes.
I did read that.
Okay.
And so it says the levy of the benefit assessment. So this indicates to me that the assessor's office also has an involvement in this?
Correct. What happens is that CPACE would tell the assessor's office, okay, now we want you to levy $30,000 on 232 Main Street. We would